Right, we have no deputations today, no presentation of petitions, but what we do have is Chrissy Williams here today to present the Tira Kāhikuhiku minutes for December, February and March. So welcome, Chrissy. Thanks for coming in on Zoom. Sorry that it's not in person.
Thanks, Tira. It's fine. It's good when everyone's on Zoom. So tēnā koutou katoa. So this is the quarterly report from Te Tira Kāhikuhiku. We've been continuing to meet. There's 1 or 2 months we haven't had to, but we're meeting on Zoom as you are. So you'll see by the summary of the minutes that most of our recommendations to LINZ have been around events or about renewal of leases or licenses. So you'll remember that LINZ license only do leases and licenses up to 6 months. So some of those have been running out and people have applied for renewal of those. Those are subject to an extension of 6 months or until the land transfers to council, and that's starting to happen. So we're in a very transitional stage now with some of the land owned by LINZ and some owned by the City Council. We've also had one application in the Port Hills area, and I'm sorry, there's an error in the summary. It says it was a renewal for 6 months lease. The Berry Farm in Sumner was for a lease for 2 years. So that was inaccurate in the summary, but correct in the minutes. So, and staff used the policy that you approved in September 2020 to do that assessment of that application. So some of it was done retrospectively, but it was a good chance to apply that policy. So that's done because council owns the Port Hills land, so it's council land. So we're now at the stage where we've got the challenge of renewing leases for LINZ or licenses for the 6 month period, but we haven't got a clear process for what happens now when the land that the leases or licenses are on transfer to council. And I suppose what I would ask, and it's probably more an operational thing, but I think you should be aware of it. We need some kind of clear table or spreadsheet of all the leases and licenses that are coming up, that are expiring, and a note of when that land is likely or is going to transfer or has transferred to council. And my suggestion to you, and as a strong one, is that some of those leases can roll over if they're for something simple, some of the small community gardens. But the policy says that if any of the leases have a high public interest, conflict with other uses, effectively stop public access, or require a lease that's longer, probably longer than 6 months, it needs to go through a more a tender process or a consultation process. And if it's longer than 10 years, the decision has to be made by council. For shorter than that, it can be made by the parks manager of parks. So what we haven't got clear direction on is how those leases, especially more significant ones, and one of those that we have approved renewal of was the Climate Action Campus, how council's going to review those leases. So we shouldn't assume that they just roll over. Because we need to make sure that they fit with the recovery regeneration plan and with your activity plan and other policies of council. So the decision for LINZ to approve them is different for your reasons for approving them. So that would just be my comment, that we need the resource and process within council staff to be able to take reports through to TTK to make recommendations on those more significant land uses in the red zone, sorry, I'm not allowed to call it that, in the corridor that are coming through as the land transfers. So that's my main comment, and I just would be interested in your response to that and how you can help us make sure that's going to happen.
Right, thank you. So I guess we address that one first of all, and I think it's one of those things where we really need an update from staff, and as you suggest, a table of all of those leases and licenses that are currently held, when they expire, and what the proposal is for going forward for renewal, rollovers, all of those kind of things, and how that fits in with the council policy. And that actually probably needs to happen not just for currently council-owned land, but stuff that will be council-owned very soon as well, right throughout all of those ex-red zone areas, both the river corridor and also the other areas that aren't part of the river corridor. And I see Mary's thumb up there. So that's a piece of work that that will happen then. Mary, is there a potential time frame for that?
I'll check with the team how far off the information from Lynn's is, and come back, and we'll send an email out next week letting you know whether it'll be next meeting or the following meeting.
Yeah, we've got a problem with meeting schedules for us specifically, in that we will be breaking committee meetings over the annual plan time.
Right.
So if it's not able, yeah.
We could bring it through as a briefing in that case.
I think that's a really good idea as a first step, right. And then for her to have it officially reported through. Right, so other questions?
Sorry,
yep.
Sarah, just add in there's, Lynn's do have a table of when leases are expiring, and so they've got that. It's the second step of how those leases, which funnel on the council's policy, they need to then go through, because there's a number of criteria that need to be considered. So that's what's missing. So it's the council side of that needs the additional column or two in that table.
And I think that a briefing is really good, because actually we need to remind ourselves of how that process is going to work. It's not one that we've had to look at again as councillors since we made that decision. And I think especially with the co-governance conversations coming up, that's really important for us to understand everything that's happening in that space. So move now to other questions. So Anne, you've got one?
Yes, kia ora. Thank you. Just in terms of that process, how much communication happens between the actual groups that are being affected by these lease rollovers or these arrangements from staff? So are they kept in the loop with what's happening?
So that's probably not a question for Chrissy though. Chrissy's here for TTK stuff, and yep. You're muted. Yep.
Sorry, I meant that question for Mary, sorry.
I'm not aware of that. We haven't got Andrew online yet, but we'll report back on that.
Yeah, I think that that'll be part of the broader briefing that we have on those processes that are being had. But for now, if we could stick to the minutes of Te Tira Kāhikuhiku, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I've got someone with their hand up whose thing is read co. Is that Courtney? No?
Yes, it is.
Courtney, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I was just wanting to comment on the communication that we are having with those groups as they are, as the Lynn's applications are coming over to council. They are being kept in the loop, saying we've got communication going out to them saying your lease is coming up for transfer over from Lynn's to council, what that process is going to look like. And then when they do get transferred from Lynn's to council, then I call them up and I have the conversation about how that looks differently. Because at the moment, it's not too different as they come over and they're all on rolling leases. But as the conversation develops, it'll be more clear for them what the process will be as well.
That's great. Thanks for that, Courtney.
Thanks.
Right. Any further questions on the minutes and... No. Well, that's pretty easy then. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Chrissy, before you switch off?
No, I don't think so. Our attendance at TTK meetings is pretty good, but this sort of feels like there's a lessening of interest just because of the decisions, or they're not decisions, the recommendations we're making. There's not a lot of significance. So, yeah, it's really hard to keep a group motivated when there's not they're not actually having a big influence on what's happening. So, so I just think that the sooner that we can get the establishment committee set up and that is able to make decisions on its own behalf, I think that will make things a bit more transparent and have a community, a group of community members that's actually really engaged. So
that's great. So thank you so much, Chrissy, and thank you for coming on today, and thanks for the time and energy that you're putting into Te Tira Kāhikuhiku as well. It's really appreciated.
Thanks, Sarah. Have a good meeting.
Thank you. So do I have a mover for those minutes, for accepting those minutes? Pauline and Melanie, move in second. All those in favour, put up your thumbs, please. Any against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay.